Hello everyone, it's been quite a while since I last posted a video, about 3 weeks. We're finally getting back into this and I hope that you've had a great day, great night, whatever time it is that you see this. Today's video we're going to be talking about Russia and Ukraine. This is a topic that has been constantly on the news for the last handful of weeks. It is on multiple news articles on the internet per day. It is constantly talked about multiple times per day on our news channels. And I've also mentioned in a lot of previous videos that I myself have interest in Ukraine. And the reason for that being the Chernobyl disaster and wanting to visit the exclusion zone and visit Pripyat and visit all of the little areas around there. I've always had a big interest in desolate places or places, that have been abandoned or incidents like that. They're interesting to go. They're time capsules. That being something that has always interested me, I have always, of course, had a big interest in the country of Ukraine. I don't have anybody that I can talk to about this type of stuff. The people that I work with, they don't have any knowledge or interest in what's going on in your side of the world. People that come into my store, customers, they don't really talk about it. They don't know anything about it. They can talk about everything else in the news. But when it comes to this type of subject or Ukraine, Russia, it's just not something that anybody has very much knowledge on. So I'm hoping through some of these videos and also from interacting with those of you who are from other countries, it will open the door for more knowledge and for me to have better understanding of what's going on in other parts of the world. Because as interesting as this is, because it is affecting the whole entire world potentially, but we have a military base within 30 minutes of where I live. They have had some of their own platoons activated onto a readiness to prepare for potential deployments to Europe and other NATO countries. Again, none of my coworkers, none of my customers, anybody like that have any real clue about what's going on, and yet we have our own military that lives here locally being activated for readiness preparedness. So let's get into this. This is also by Al Jazeera, which is funded in part by the Qatari government. This is not just an American propaganda video. Here we go.
As Vladimir Putin commemorated those who died in the siege of Leningrad in the Second World War, his military had all but encircled Ukraine. The Russian government has repeatedly said it has no intention of launching an invasion, but the option seems to be there.
Philosophically, we're usually bad at predicting war. We usually get it wrong. Either we think it won't happen, but it does, or we think it will happen, but it doesn't. And we were surprised when Putin moved into Crimea in 2014. We were surprised when Russia moved into Georgia in 2008. We were surprised when Russia moved into Syria in 2015. This time, Putin is giving us weeks of notice. So maybe he's got something else in mind.
There you go.
Well, Putin's views on Ukraine are well known. He's often repeated them.
We cannot but be concerned by the prospect of Ukraine joining NATO because it will lead, without a doubt, to the deployment of troops, military bases and threatening us with weapons there.
When the Soviet Union broke up in 1991, Russia lost control of 14 former republics. The loss of Ukraine was the hardest pill to swallow.
As I see it, Ukraine is the key factor in the failure to reunite the Soviet Union. I don't mean that literally, but in Putin's attempt to recreate a certain unity or union based around the former republics.
Now, I've always kind of wondered, because I hear about it, and especially more now, that the whole NATO situation, with Russia not wanting Ukraine to join NATO and all the different news around that. But I guess it wasn't until recent that I am still understanding or trying to understand, if I got this correct, is the whole reason behind why Russia doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO, because that also would allow NATO allies to literally be positioned right on the border just right on the border of Russia. Just right there, smack dab on the border, where right now Ukraine is kind of serving more of a buffer zone between our NATO allies and Russia itself. If I've got that correct. And again, I'm coming from a place of really trying to understand this.
Ukraine isn't interested in this, and that remains a major problem for Putin.
Putin has tried to keep Ukraine close before. In 2013, under Russian pressure, then President Viktor Yanukovych rejected closer ties with the EU. That prompted nationwide protests, resulting in Yanukovych's downfall. Months later, Putin annexed Crimea.
The long-term goal of Putin and his elites is Russia's isolation from the West and its non-Western development. And in this sense, Ukraine, which is closely connected to Russia culturally, is a window to the West, and as so is an eyesore for Putin.
Vladimir Putin has described Russians and Ukrainians as one people who share a single historic and spiritual space. He doesn't want to lose that connection, though that might not be the view of many Ukrainians. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera.
Let's bring in Russian affairs.
We're so closely related heritagely and historically and all the other ideas behind that. So therefore, you are us and you're going to stay with us.
Analyst Vladimir Sotnikov from Moscow. Good to have you with us, sir. What, in your opinion, are Russia's intentions regarding Ukraine? What is this military buildup at the border for?
Good afternoon. At my opinion, actually, there is no question of any aggression on behalf of Russia or any Russia's intention to invade Ukraine or to make even incursions. I think that the whole question is revolving around the issue of expanding the NATO and the probable participation of Ukraine in the enlargement of NATO. This is one thing. Another thing, I think that this is the controversial question of putting US and NATO medium and shorter range missiles on the Ukrainian territory. This is the question which is very much worrying Moscow, and Moscow doesn't want to have these missiles practically on its border because the flying time then would be 3 to 5 minutes, and this is a serious question for Moscow. And another thing also is that if you remember back in history, these missiles could resemble the situation which was when the Soviet Union was existing. In 1982 and 1983, NATO decided to put medium and shorter range.
And also, these are things I don't really know about and are definitely interesting topics that I should explore more, is what the Soviet Union really was and more of the whole union itself. And because a lot of that, it all happened and broke apart, and a lot of these things all happened, right at the same time or just before and close, all in that same area where I was born. So I don't know any of this. And plus, living here in the United States, here in Kentucky, this isn't knowledge or topics that we talk about or really study.
On the Russian western border in NATO countries, and Russia and the Soviet Union retaliate. So I think this is not the question of any retaliation from Russia, but the question of a security situation.
So this ongoing military presence on the border with Ukraine is all about President Putin trying to force concessions from the West over NATO.
You might say so, but actually not only concessions. Another thing that Russia would very much like that Ukraine will resume its participation in the Minsk format negotiations, and I think that this question would be discussed probably if there will be another summit between President Putin and President Biden. So not only security situation, but also the situation in general. I mean, when I'm saying in general, I mean that Russia actually would like to have not only guarantees, but also to be sure that its eastern neighbor is not hostile to her.
So, I mean, why is Russia so opposed to neighbors becoming part of NATO? You talk about them being hostile. NATO would argue that the troops and missiles are only on its eastern boundary as a deterrent and for defense purposes only against an expansionist Russia.
Well, actually, Russia is not sure at all that, of course, it's not that the policy of so-called expansionism actually is forcing the West to deter Russia. Russia thinks on vice versa. Russia thinks that these are aggressive plans against Russian identity, against Russian security. So I think that at the end of the time, Russia would like, as I said, the friendly Ukraine, not the country which will be participating in any plans which Russia thinks can be in NATO countries' mind.
Good to talk to you. So many thanks indeed for being with us. Vladimir Sotnikov there, live in Moscow.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is why Ukraine matters so much to Russia's Vladimir Putin by the Al Jazeera English channel. What are your thoughts as far as will Russia continue to put up this pressure on the borders, or is that kind of blown more out of proportion than what is actually happening? The reason I say that is because on a lot of the news channels here, they have been reporting, of course, that Russia has put out many press releases saying that, you know, a lot of this is being overhyped, that there is no such, that of course this is just military drills and that these will all be over soon. Then there's other ones saying that, you know, that we're overhyping it up as far as the United States is putting a lot of hype into this and is practically instigating a lot of this. So I'm just curious really to where that line is, because I always feel like there's, you know, this side of the story, there's this side of the story, and somewhere in that middle lies the truth, because I can't just be one-sided. I have to listen to many different sources, many different sides of the story, and actually be willing to sit through and have these types of conversations and understand, hey, I got this wrong, and this is what is actually correct, or these are the things I need to fix because that's obviously not the way that I thought it was. I could be completely right, I could be completely wrong, and that's okay. That's why I'm trying to learn, and that's why I make these videos. I hope that you have a great day, great night, whatever time it is that you see this. It's me, Bryson P., and goodbye.